College football used to have villains, guys like Johnny Manziel and the Boz, but today players are just more careful. Like, I can't remember the last time I heard about a college football player getting arrested. And we live in an era where it's like, gotta be careful. Everyone's got a camera phone, and they're not getting arrested because they're more mature. It's because no one wants to stick out, and they're part of a different generation, a generation that we miscalculated 5 years ago. College football players today have more to lose than ever. NIL money, future endorsements, draft stock, all dependent on keeping a clean image. Now, it's a good thing from the perspective of not getting in trouble, but is there a downside to that? That's what I want to explore today. So the motivation for this video started from Rich Rod's announcement last week that he was banning TikTok for all his players, which, as you dive into that headline, he's not banning the app, he's just banning dancing on the app, which I actually think makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't be surprised if he's the first of many coaches to do that. But it got me thinking of like, is TikTok really that big of an issue in locker rooms? And then it got me thinking of like, why does it feel like we never hear about players getting in trouble anymore? Like, that used to be a off-season rhythm. Shoot, I even remember it playing at SC and Pitt. Like, you could almost like book it into the off-season protocol that you were going to get 2 to 3 guys that would get into legal trouble, and that would just be part of, like, just like you would have injuries built into your roster, you could build in arrests, as bad as that is to say. And so in this video, I want to dive into some of the history around players getting in trouble and like the hard stats and data from like 2010 on, before social media and after social media. And then I want to give you my thoughts of why I think we're in the position right now where it doesn't feel like players are really getting in trouble. In 2010, Sports Illustrated and CBS did a joint study or a joint investigation looking at how many players on the preseason top 25 teams got arrested, and it was 7% of players. 204 players out of 2,837, and 39% of those arrests were for serious charges, including assault, domestic violence, burglary, drug possession, and DUI. In 2012, 197 players on BCS teams were arrested. I entered college football in 2013, and I remember that being chatter. It was like right after the Urban Meyer Florida news, and it was like, man, we got to get this right in college football. And then if you take it a step further and compile the arrest statistics for FBS college football programs over the 5-year period from 2010 to 2015, it's a total of over 900 arrests. That's an arrest every other day. In a world where we're all checking our X feeds and posting content on all these platforms, again, I haven't really heard about a college football player getting in trouble this whole offseason. And I'm sure someone could comment down below of a player I'm missing, but it's hard to think of. What caught me off guard is when you look at the top programs for arrests, which is never a list that you want to be on. The Washington State Cougs top the list at 31, which is exact opposite of what you'd think. The Pullman, how you getting arrested in Pullman? I would have to imagine it's when guys go home for summer and spring break and they get out of the bubble that is Pullman, and then it's, might get yourself in trouble, but then Florida's after them. That's well documented. Georgia, especially, this is a different time period, but Georgia as of late with the some of the driving incidences that they've been charged with. Back in the day, they were number 3, Texas A&M and University of Oklahoma. If you're watching this like, Max, what incidents are you looking for? I'm talking like we should have more Josh Rosen hot tub incidents. Like, when that happened, the common talking point would have been like, he might be the first, but he's definitely not going to be the last. And this arrogant generation that's going to grow up with social media, like, man, there's going to be a lot more where that comes from. Everyone's got a smartphone and a camera and a video, but it really hasn't been the case. And even Josh Rosen wasn't necessarily the first. Different LA quarterback, Matt Leinart, had his own hot tub incident, and that's when camera phones weren't even mainstream. Guy like Johnny Manziel with the Scooby-Doo Halloween costume. You would think that we would have a Halloween incident every single college football season, but it doesn't really feel like we do. Even a guy like Jameis Winston, who we've come to know and love his heart and personality. But back then, again, right when social media really started to become mainstream in college football, he got caught on camera stealing crab legs in a grocery store. I feel like nowadays in 2025, there should be a clip like that every month. But there isn't. To me, there's 3 reasons Gen Zers are not getting in as much trouble. College football, Gen Zers, that is. 1, they grew up hyper aware of their digital footprint. Versus my generation, that was not the case. That's an adjustment that a lot of kids had to make. I relate more to the Gen Zers in this because I grew up feeling like all the eyes were always on me, and maybe that's a fault of my own. Maybe that's me being ego and arrogant. But I remember in 6th grade when I got my first MySpace, and then again in 8th grade when I got my first cell phone, of being like, like all eyes are on me. I gotta watch what I'm saying. I gotta be careful. And I was a kid. I probably sent some texts and messages that, as a teenager, you regret. But I don't have, like, the guy that always comes to mind is Josh Allen. There's tweets. I don't even know what the tweets are, to be honest, but they come up on some social media post every like 6 months or so of some out of pocket thing that he said when he was a teenager. And whenever I see that, I'm like, that to me is a kid who was not living under a microscope or not living like all the eyeballs were watching him, versus my childhood. I felt like it was the exact opposite. And that's how kids have it today, right? They grow up not knowing a world where everyone didn't have a camera in their phone. And so they live their life accordingly. So instead of it being, oh, this generation, man, they're all over social media. They're going to be doing crazy stuff. There's a video at every single party. It's actually gone the opposite, where people may be more secluded and secretive and private, or just aware of what's going on. 2, drinking's down in our society. There's a World Finance report that shows that Gen Zs drink on average 20% less than millennials, who also drink less than generations older than them. So that's not a groundbreaking take, and it's obviously bigger than just college football, but alcohol consumption going down in our society. The personal story that I'll share is I remember I worked a USC game one time, and I was talking with a coach on staff after the game. They had won or something. And I remember as a player, like after you won, maybe this is classic backup quarterback energy, but like I was pumped to go to the party afterwards, like, and go have a good time with your buddies and celebrate and go to the 9-0. Shout out the 9-0 for SC fans. But like he was saying, yeah, I remember when we used to all do that, but nowadays kids just want to go home and go to their apartment and play video games and just hang out. And I don't have any data on weed consumption, so I don't know if that is a factor at all. Don't get me wrong, college kids still want to party, but the drinking culture I don't think is as prevalent for college kids nowadays. And the reason that's relevant is because all of those, or most of those crazy situations, I would say 9 out of 10, 19 out of 20 have alcohol as part of the incident. And the final reason I think we're in this spot is social media has led to rising levels of anxiety and loneliness. And there's a study, I believe I found it from Forbes, that approximately 73% of Gen Z feels alone sometimes or always, compared to just 24% for baby boomers. And I'm aware that those numbers might be inflated, or I guess technically deflated for baby boomers, because I think there's a general greater level of awareness on mental health in general from the new school generation than the old school generation. So I'm sure there's some baby boomers that still did feel lonely, and that number might be light. But either way, the point still holds true that social media has led to loneliness, where people can just doom scroll by themselves, and they, instead of going out to the 9-0 like I was talking about after a game, they're going back to their room and just scrolling and chilling. The algorithms also led to constant dopamine hit. So then when you're not having that dopamine hit, amongst other aspects that I'm sure mental health professionals could speak on better than me, it leads to rising levels of anxiety, all of which lead to people having less face-to-face social interaction, less partying, and less opportunities to put yourself in a scenario where you ultimately can get in trouble. And so while it's nice to say, oh, college football players are getting in less trouble nowadays, well, the flip side is this pillar 3, where, hey, they're not getting in trouble as much because maybe they're not being as social, they're not going out as more, they're not being as free, and kids and teenagers and young adults like we all were, which was an absolute blast. And sometimes you're right on that edge of, man, getting arrested, which I mean, you don't want to get arrested, but my point is just the headline of, oh, college football players are not getting in trouble as much. It's not all good. And that's more serious. But on a lighter note, Johnny Manziel's and Jameis Winston's and Josh Rosen's, they're great for college football. And sure, we have, social media influencers and bigger personalities like a Shedeur Sanders last year. Not saying Shedeur Sanders is getting in trouble. Like this upcoming season, the big names, it's Arch Manning. I've never really seen Arch Manning. I mean, he's got a couple social media clips out there, but like villains aren't necessarily bad for college football, because we all know when we're watching those Johnny Manziel clips or videos, there's part of us that's like, yeah, man, I remember that one party we went to back in the day. I remember doing this. Like I remember with my group chat, it was like, not that I was doing Johnny Manziel stuff or even had the street cred that he had, but you could look at that video being like, man, I remember when I wore a cow onesie. I literally met my wife wearing a cow onesie at the Lambda Chi atrium at a party, probably on a Thursday night. Wasn't during the football season, but like we're all having a good time. And so I think some of that is healthy for college football. It's at least fun to break down. I'm not saying the DUIs and the assault and all that is good, but I am saying a college football world where we have no characters, That ain't fun. It started with the Rich Rod headline of he's banning TikTok and led me down a rabbit hole of like, yo, why are players not getting in as much trouble as they used to? That seems counterintuitive. And I think it made for a good video. If you thought so, hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel as well. If this is the first time you're seeing one of my videos, I appreciate you hanging with me all the way through. I'm Max Brown. I'm coming out with football content every single day. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to not miss anything. Thanks, guys.